Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from the World Rapid Championship featuring 8-year-old Grandmaster Roman Shogdzhiev who defeated not one, not two, not three or four, but 5 Grandmasters throughout the World Rapid and Blitz Championship, and being 8 years old, that is absolutely incredible. It'd be incredible if he only defeated one of them, but he actually defeated 5 of them, and it's not official, as I don't know if I've read in the article that chess.com might have somewhere in the database that some 8-year-old defeated a grandmaster in a rapid game, in an official rapid game, but as the search wasn't really conclusive, we could also say that this is the first time an 8-year-old ever defeated a grandmaster in a serious official game. So his opponent and this is round 1 of the rapid event. He started off with a very nice win against a very strong Jakhongir Vakhidov of Uzbekistan, grandmaster who also was a part of the team that won first place in the chess Olympiad. And yeah, I mean, for those of you probably have heard of him, of course, he's a very strong player, but for those of you who haven't, he also defeated some very strong players in this event. He defeated Anish Giri, he defeated Gukesh, he defeated Jordan Van Forest, he defeated many grandmasters and drew some very strong ones. So that being said, let's check it out and see how 8-year-old Roman Shogdzhiev faces off against such a deadly opponent. So Jakhongir has the white pieces and he opens with pawn to c4. We have pawn to c6, countering the English with the Caro-Kann. We have pawn to d4 and d5, transposing into the Slav defense. C captures, and now bishop to f4. So the exchange variation of the Slav. Knight to f6, and now pawn to e3. We have knight to c6 and bishop to d3. So sort of a London system setup. Bishop to g4, and now pawn to f3, kicking away the bishop back to d7, and now knight to c3. So very nicely developing pieces. We have pawn to e6 and pawn to g4. Still, all theory, g4 is considered to be by far the strongest move here. Bishop to e7 and knight g to e2. The knight can later on come to f4 if the bishop moves, or you can put the knight to g3 where you control a lot of squares. Castles, and now there are a couple of games where a3 was played, also h4 is a known move, but here we have king to f2, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game in a fairly equal position. White is probably a little bit better, but nothing spectacular. So knight to e8. Roman prepares to advance the pawn all the way to f5, but he also wants to remaneuver the knight to d6. We have pawn to h4 and now knight to d6. And here is a very interesting moment in the game where you really want to continue advancing those pawns, but the problem is if black gets knight to b4 in, it could be very annoying. And if you allow knight b4, then the bishop comes to b1 with your rook undeveloped on a1, and if you develop the rook, then still knight to b4 attacks the bishop, and if the bishop moves back, then knight to c4 is just very annoying. And okay, you have to defend the b pawn. Let's say you play something like b3, knight a3, and again you're not going to be able to keep your light square bishop, which is kind of the key piece in the attack for white here. So instead, pawn to a3. That's why the attack slows down a little bit. We have pawn to f5 and now pawn to g5 and rook to c8. Nicely continuing development, putting pressure on white's queen side. And now, of course, Roman's plan is to put the knight on a5 to control c4 and b3, and this should be countered with b4, as most positions should. However, queen to c2 was played, and now knight to a5, as b4 was not played. So pawn to b3, stopping knight c4, and now bishop back to e8, shifting the bishop over to this diagonal, even though you could continue with something like queen b6 to put pressure on the pawn here, and also knight to e4 is a nice idea, since the knight, if captured, then the bishop gets attacked, and the bishop also does not have any squares. But okay, bishop to e8 was played, also a nice move. Queen to b2, unpinning from the rook on the c file, and now pawn to b5. We have rook a to c1 and pawn to a6 now, solidifying on the queen side, and now bishop to g3. Here bishop to h2 is much stronger and is the move that white should play, but after bishop to g3, this just runs into knight to e4 check. Still nothing decisive, but you shouldn't give up such a strong piece. So knight to e4 check was played, and again, if you capture with the pawn, then of course f captures on e4, delivers a check from the rook, and again the bishop will be lost. So he decided to give up the bishop right away. We have f captures, and now knight to f4, going after the e6 pawn. So defending it, bishop to d7, and now comes f captures on e4. Definitely best. You don't have to worry about the pin here. There's no way to actually advance any pawns to attack that knight. D captures on e4, and now king to g2. You cannot go after the e4 pawn. If you grab it right away, then you run into some bishop to c6 action, and after king f3, sort of to defend it, then queen d5 comes, as the knight here is pinned, so you can even play that. And if you defend it, then even knight captures on b3, threatening knight to d2 with a royal fork, as this knight now is also pinned. So this is a recipe for disaster. So instead, a nice king to g2, and now pawn to e5. Pawn to e5 is a good idea, but you should first prepare it with knight b7, knight to d6, as it doesn't seem like white has an active plan here. You should take all the time you need to put your pieces on optimal squares before deciding for such a pawn push. But okay, it's a rapid game. Pawn to e5, d captures on e5, and now bishop to g4, going after bishop to f3 check, but he missed knight c to d5, and this is now somewhat annoying for black, because if you go for this bishop to f3 check, let's say king h2 and bishop captures on h1, there's rook captures on c8. And now, if you capture, knight captures on e7 check with the royal fork will cost you the queen. And if you don't, well, then you're just worse. There's not much that can be done here. For example, queen to d7, just pawn to e6 can be played, and not a lot of good squares for that queen. What do you play? Queen to b7, then comes knight to h5, and all of a sudden you're getting checkmated. So all sorts of tricky stuff in the position here. So queen to d7 was played, and now comes king to h2, and this is a miss in a very, very complicated position. Sorry about that, as it is a rapid game, but here you should go for rook captures on c8, queen captures on c8, or you go for rook captures on c8, doesn't really matter, and then knight to b6. But this is probably why he decided to avoid it, because of the bishop captures on a3 move. And now it looks like if queen captures, you have this queen to d2 check, and if you don't capture the queen, what else do you play? Well, queen to a2, this is the move you have to find, and then after the queen moves, doesn't really matter, you'll play knight captures here, and after bishop to f3 check, just king h2, and it doesn't matter. White is just completely winning. Black has no counterplay here whatsoever. Of course, you could capture the knight, but then queen captures on a3, and if you capture here, queen can capture on a5, and you're at least up a piece. So that's the problem. But king to h2 was played, allowing black sort of a way back into the game. Bishop to f3, and now pawn to e6. A very strong move, but again, rook captures on c8 was more precise. Queen to b7, now guarding the b6 square, which is very good for black. Rook captures on c8, we have rook captures on c8, and now rook to c1, offering a trade of rooks, and now rook captures, queen captures, and bishop to d6. Still, white is completely winning, and Roman is barely holding on here, but this is rapid. The position is extremely complicated, and remember, when I say that someone is completely winning here, that means with precise engine play, and when you have little time on the clock, that's not what happens when humans are playing. So queen to d2, and now knight to c6. Imagine what you would get if you put Tal's positions on an engine. They would, the engine would say Tal is a madman. But try playing it against Tal. Not happening. So here, knight to f6 check, trading the knight to mess up the black king's pawn structure and also to pick up the bishop on d6. G captures on f6, and now queen captures on d6. We have f captures on g5, and now the move you have to play to win is either h captures on g5 or just queen d5. Just prepare this e7 push, and there's not much you can do here. For example, if you capture e7 check, covers f8 and f7, and e8 queen will be game over. But in the game, knight to d5 was played, which works pretty much against every move that black makes except one, and that is queen to g7. White is still winning, or maybe even close to winning, but you have to play it very precisely. The only way to win is h captures on g5, but you don't find this in a speed game. For example, captures, how do you stop queen h5 check followed by queen to h1? You have to play king to g1, and now after queen h6 going for queen to h1, you have to play king to f2. yeah, good luck finding that. And now whatever you play, there's just nothing. And even if you don't go for that, if you go for queen captures on c6, there's queen to b2 check, followed by queen to g2 checkmate wherever the white king goes. So instead, after queen to g7, bishop to f2 was played, but now all of a sudden Roman is winning and he wins the game. G captures on h4. How do you stop checkmate? Well, you have to defend. Knight to f4 is played. Now comes queen to b2, threatening queen captures on f2. We have knight to h3, defending the bishop, and he goes back. Queen to g7, again threatens mate. Knight to f4, and now queen to b2. Knight to h3 and queen to g7 and knight to f4. And now, if he plays the queen back to b2 one more time, it will be a draw by threefold repetition, so he has to figure out something else. What is this else? Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Roman Shogdzhiev while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding all of the nice tactics here. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is, of course, queen to a1. And now that the knight blocks checkmate with knight to g2, the next move is queen to f1, going after queen captures on g2, checkmate. So, knight captures on h4, now guarding g2, but also if queen to h1 check, you can sort of start running with king to g3. But in order to stop checkmate, you had to give up the bishop. So queen captures on f2 check, king h3, queen f1 check, king to h2, queen to h1 check, king to g3, and now, of course, queen to g1 with check. Setting up for a very nice checkmate, king to h3, and now bishop to g4 with a most spectacular checkmate. This is the first game Roman Shogdzhiev played in the World Rapid Championship. He defeated a very, very strong Grandmaster, and he played a very, very strong event. Throughout the World Rapid and Blitz Championship, he defeated Vakhidov, Christiansen, Shevchenko, Alan Pichot, and Anand. Not the big Anand, the small Anand, but still, you know, Anand is an Anand. And yeah, incredible event. I mean, if an 8-year-old defeats a Grandmaster everywhere, it hits the headlines. But if he beats 5 Grandmasters, that's well, that's something else. And he even met Magnus after the Rapid event. Got to meet him. You know, probably Magnus signed something for him, and Magnus said that he's very impressed and that he wouldn't be surprised if we see him in top events. You know, maybe even in a few years. Of course, he will have to gain some rating before he is invited to elite events, but you know, if you play like this at 8, I mean, should be fairly quick before that happens. And it's sort of a you know, the opposite of Alireza's story. You know, also Christiansen, when he lost to him, he's the second Grandmaster that he defeated, said for the Norwegian television that he never heard of him, but probably he should have heard of him, as you know, if he can he can defeat him. And that it's incredible to be playing such strong chess at the age of 8, as he himself only basically learned how the pieces move at the age of 8. And then you have Alireza, who hasn't even started learning the rules until he was like 9. So, you know, you hear stories when they start at like the age of 3, maybe even 2.5. But sometimes you have the Alireza story, who started very late, but you know, for some reason it worked well for him. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and a little bit of information about the incredible Roman Shogdzhiev. Very much looking forward to seeing what he does next. I would like to thank Welsh fan Wang Xuan, Sasha Vidler, Mark Henley Brennan, and Michael Mails for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. And as usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. And sorry, in the previous video, I said it was 2023 when it's 2024. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that will happen throughout January, as it does every year. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.